Hello and welcome to another Field Notes Explainer. Today we're going to discuss something that can feel like a huge, confusing maze for any parent. The full and individual initial evaluation. You might hear it called the FIIE. This is square one, the very first step in figuring out if your child truly needs special education services at school. So we're going to break it down together. You know, as a parent, questions can really keep you up at night. You see that your child is having a tough time. You feel that worry deep in your gut, but you just don't know why. Or your child's teacher has raised concerns and has suggested they may need more support, and you're not sure what that means. Well, the evaluation we're talking about today is designed to be the starting point for finding those answers, to understand what's going on, so your child can finally get the support they need to really shine. So to make this whole thing less intimidating, we've laid out a roadmap. Today we'll start with the absolute basics. What even is an FIIE? Then we'll bust some common myths. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the process, your rights as a parent, what to look for in that final report, and we'll wrap up with what happens after the evaluation. Ready? Let's get started. All right, first things first. What in the world is an FIIE? That acronym, again, stands for a full and individual initial evaluation. At its core, it's a deep dive that will answer the first of two huge questions that must be answered before your child can receive special education. Number one, and this question is what the FIIE process is all about. Does my child have a disability? And number two, and this is just as important, because of that disability, do they need special education to actually make progress in school? It's not one or the other. You have to have both to qualify for special education services. And this is a really crucial point that trips up a lot of families. Just because your child has a diagnosis from a doctor, maybe for ADHD or autism, that doesn't automatically punch their ticket to special education. The evaluation must determine if they meet the criteria for one of the 13 eligibility categories outlined in the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, and then draw a clear line showing if and how that disability is impacting their education. It's all about connecting the dots. You know, there is so much confusing information out there about these evaluations. So for this next part, let's just clear the air and bust some of the biggest myths you're likely to hear. Okay, myth number one. Sometimes parents are told that an FIIE is a way to get a free IQ test. Or a teacher may say, let's test this student just to see where they're at. Nope, not at all. While an IQ test and an academic assessment might be part of the evaluation, that's not the goal. The real point is to be a detective, to investigate a suspected disability and see if it's getting in the way of learning. It's not about satisfying curiosity. It's about finding answers. Here's another big one. A child must be struggling or have F's on their report card before they're evaluated. That's absolutely not true. School is so much more than just grades, right? This psychoeducational evaluation looks at the whole picture. Things like social skills, behavior, communication, emotional regulation. A kid can have straight A's and still desperately need support in these other areas to succeed. And finally, this is a fear we hear from a lot of parents. If I agree to this evaluation, am I locked in? Am I agreeing to special education right then and there? No, you are not. Giving your consent just gets the ball rolling. It allows the school to start gathering additional information. The decision about what, if any, services are needed comes way later, and you are a huge part of that decision. Okay, so we've covered what this evaluation isn't. Now let's pull back the curtain on how it all actually works and who the key players are. It's basically a two-step dance. First, you have a group called the Multidisciplinary Team, or MDT. Their job is to do the investigation, gather all the data, administer the tests, and make the observations. They're in charge of completing the FIIE. Then, once the evaluation is finalized, a different group called the ARD Committee comes in. They're like the jury. They look at all the evidence the MDT gathered and make the final decision. One team finds the facts, the other makes the call. So, who makes up that first team, the MDT? Well, you'll have a professional like a school psychologist, an educational diagnostician, or a speech-language pathologist leading the team. You might also have an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or an orientation and mobility specialist, maybe an audiologist, a physician, or a variety of other specialists. Who leads the MDT and which specialists are included on the team is based on the area or areas of suspected disability. But here's the most important part. In conducting the evaluation, the school must, and I quote, use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather relevant functional, developmental, and academic information about the child, including information provided by the parent. Did you catch that last part? You are not on the sidelines. Parental perspectives, concerns, and observations are a required part of the data collection. And that leads us to our next section, which is all about your power in this process. Because let me tell you, knowing your rights is critical. Let's talk timelines. because these are not suggestions. They are legally binding deadlines. Once you put your request for an evaluation in writing, the school has 15 school days to get back to you. After you sign the consent form, a new clock starts. They have 45 school days to get that evaluation done. Burn those numbers into your brain. Now, there are a couple of small exceptions. In Texas, if your child is absent 3 or more days within the evaluation window, the due date is extended by the number of days they have been out of school. And if the school obtains consent when there are between 35 and 45 school days left in the year, that report will be due June 30th. Beyond those deadlines, you have other key rights. The school cannot do anything without providing informed consent and getting written permission. The evaluation has to be comprehensive. It can't just be one little test. And keep in mind, you can change your mind at any point and withdraw your consent. Just make sure you put it in writing and understand that withdrawing consent is not retroactive. The data the MDT has already collected will still be in your child's educational record. And this last one is huge. When it is all said and done, if you disagree with the findings of the FIIE, you have the right to ask for an independent educational evaluation, or an IEE. That's a second opinion from an outside expert. And it's paid for by the school district. We'll cover what may trigger the request for an IEE later. Always remember, you are not just a passive observer here. You are an essential partner. Your insights and observations of the full medical, developmental, and educational history are only something that you can provide. And that's critical information that ensures this evaluation is a true and complete picture of your kid. So, the evaluation is done. What can you expect to see in that final report? What does a whole child evaluation actually look like on paper? Let's take a peek inside. A good FIIE is going to give you a 360-degree view. It's not just going to focus on reading and math scores. The MDT is also looking at how your child thinks and processes information, their social and emotional well-being, how they communicate, and even things like their physical health or motor skills. It's all about seeing how these different pieces of the puzzle fit together. Now, these reports can be long and full of jargon. So when you get a copy, hunt for these 4 things. First, look for impact statements. That's the part that says how the disability, if any, is affecting them in class. Look for need statements. That's the part that should tell you the types of support they may need to succeed. The report should also have concrete recommendations. And finally, make sure every professional on the team is signed off on whether they agree with the findings. Okay, we've reached our final section. The evaluation is done. The report is written. What is the final crucial step in this whole process? The number you need to remember now is 30. And listen closely, because this is 30 calendar days, not school days. Weekends and holidays count. Within 30 calendar days of that report being finished, the school must sit down with you for a meeting to go over everything. And don't forget, they must provide you with a copy of the evaluation at least 5 days before you meet. So this is the big meeting we've talked about. In Texas, it's called an ARD meeting, and it's where the final decision about eligibility gets made. The committee, which includes you, will look at all the data in the evaluation and officially answer that second big question we mentioned at the beginning of this video. So the FIIE answers that first question, right? It tells the committee whether or not the student meets disability criteria under IDEA. If the answer is yes, meaning the student does have a disability, that's when the team moves on to that second big question. Based on the information contained in the evaluation and input from the ARD committee members, is there an educational need for special education services? If the answer to that question is also yes, that's when the team starts building the roadmap for your child's success, which is called an Individualized Education Program, or an IEP. But here are some other scenarios. Let's say the evaluation determines that your child does meet the IDEA criteria for a disability, but the committee agrees there is not an educational need for specially designed instruction through special education. Under that circumstance, the student does not qualify for services and no IEP is drafted. When a student with a disability doesn't require special education services, they are likely eligible for a Section 504 plan, which provides accommodations to support their learning in the general education classroom. A high-quality FIIE will include recommendations for appropriate accommodations that the team can include in a Section 504 plan. Now, what happens when the FIIE determines that your child does not meet the IDEA criteria for a disability? In that case, the committee will not consider whether there is an educational need for special education. If you feel like the evaluation was thorough, accurate, and you agree with the conclusions, the next step is to ask the team how they can continue to support your child through general education interventions and supports. But if you don't agree with the evaluation, that's when you should request the Independent Educational Evaluation, or IEE. So before we wrap this up, I want to give you a quick checklist. As a parent, you are the Chief Quality Control Officer. So be on the lookout for red flags in that final report. Does it feel too narrow, like it's all based on one test score? Did they forget to actually observe your child in the classroom? Did they ignore your family's culture or language? Or did they just plain miss one of the areas you were worried about? A solid evaluation won't have any of these issues. In the end, that FIIE report, it's just data. It's facts and professional opinions on paper. It's a tool. And if need be, you can take that tool and you use it to tell your child's story, to fight for what they need, and to make sure they have every opportunity to be happy and successful in school and in life. That's it for today's video. If you'd like to keep learning about special education, education policy, and parenting essentials, be sure to subscribe to our Field Notes newsletter. We've already covered topics like FAPE, LRE, special education referrals, and more, and we'll continue building on the ideas we introduced here. Whether you're a parent, teacher, service provider, or simply curious, Field Notes is designed to keep you informed and empowered. And if you need more hands-on support, here's what we offer: special education and Section 504 non-attorney advocacy, parent and family support services, education savings account support for schools, vendors, service providers, and families, and of course, our free resource, the Field Notes newsletter. Learn more at Accessible-EducationTX.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Stick with us, and we'll help you navigate special education with confidence and clarity every step of the way. Just a quick note, our Field Notes resources are for informational purposes only. We don't provide legal, mental health, or diagnostic services. Parents can book a free 30-minute consultation anytime on our website,